Hello and welcome to the Holy Hour podcast. It's the bi-weekly, usually all-cure podcast. I'm Gavin, and we have another installment of Shows of a Lost World Tour 2023 update for you guys. Today we are covering 4 new shows. We venture into foreign lands, then back into the U.S., slowly crawling across the middle of our wonderful country. But before we dive into Vancouver, Salt Lake City, Denver, and St. Paul, we are going to do something that might happen quite commonly now as this tour kind of stretches along. Turns out that we got a contribution that was on the last batch, but we don't want to leave it out. So we are going to call it a tour flashback. Friend of the show and listener, Bruce, has been kind enough to send us his thoughts on the Portland show. So we are going to flash back to Portland, Oregon, May 31st, and see what experience he had at the show. So let's hand it off to Bruce as we backtrack before moving forward.
Hello, Gavin. My name is Bruce Eisler. I'm from Newport, Oregon, and been a big Cure fan since 1983. And I have a review of Portland's show. We all know it starts off with Alone. Robert was slowly stalking the stage from side to side, relishing and drinking in the enthusiasm and love from the crowd, as Alone just droned on in the background, picking up speed, and as it went on to a beautiful opener that is up there with Want and Plain Song. Then we had If Only Tonight We Could Sleep and 1,000 Hours. Really good gems that were a surprise for me, even though we know they're on the tour. I haven't seen these in person since the Kissing tour, so I was really, really lucky that they did it tonight. Then when they played A Fragile Thing, I was having the same feelings about the song as your guest Scott had. It was okay. I liked it, but I could have done without it for another song. Burn was ramped up by Jason's spot-on thundering drums. I wasn't a big fan of his when he came on to The Cure, but he completely has my respect as a top-notch drummer. Then, coming down from Burn, what do Robert and company do? They pull out M for the first time on tour. I was over the moon, a song I have never seen done at the show I've attended. In fact, 17 Seconds was actually pretty well represented in the Portland show. 4 songs, Play for Today, M, A Forest, and At Night, which I also believe I have never heard done live while I was at the show. The next 6 songs brought on a real sonic boom as the pace quickened and Simon's bass took over. I could feel the power of his bass thumping through the seats and floor. Starting with Push, then Play for Today, Forest, where Simon destroys it at the end in an angry like fury. Shake Dog Shake, Edge of the Deep Green Sea, and End Song finished off that part of the set. The crowd was starting to rock, and they were ready for the encores. And you can tell that I can never say goodbye, still get to him. His emotion carried over to It Can Never Be the Same. He stomped his foot, yelled at the mic, and brought an angst of not being able to go on without his love. Rounded out by more emotional songs in Plain Song and Disintegration, it was the perfect lead-in to the Great 8 to finish the show. Have to say, I could notice a big difference Perry made on the guitar. The walk was more guitar-oriented and seemed just different than other times I've seen it. And Friday and Then Love seemed like a little bit faster and spruced up. by his guitar playing. Usually I can leave that song behind, but it actually was pretty good that night. As the notes of Boys Don't Cry faded into the night, Robert again roamed the stage to say thank you to a very raucous, into it Portland crowd, giving him all the love he deserves, especially what he did for us fans in fighting Ticketmaster and scalping. I went with my wife, Patty, and my friend Scott. It was his first time seeing The Cure, even though he's a huge fan. He couldn't stop crying until after the pictures of you. I mean, I even shed tears when Robert enters the stage. He was blown away and mentioned they sound a lot better live than on record. I just replied, and you're surprised? The merch line was long when we arrived, but moved along pretty quickly. Plus, there were several around the arenas to spread out the crowd. The poster for the show was kind of interesting. Not sure, is it a cubist work? Impressionist? I don't know. I just called it an avant-garde interpretation of Standing on a Beach. So that's about it. It was an amazing show. I think it probably was better than the 2016 show. My ninth show. So back to you, Gavin, and love your show, love you guys, and rock on with The Cure. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Bruce. That was very cool and a nice little flashback to Portland. We must stop occasionally and reflect. So thank you for that. And so glad you got M. That is super rad. I hope that comes back more frequently into the set. I would love to hear M on the East Coast here. But now let's catch up a little bit more in real time. Let's get show 16 started. After Portland, the band heads on over to Canada, June 2nd. Friday night at Rogers Arena, Vancouver, Canada. And guess what? We have a first-hand account of how this all went down from none other than our buddy Nat. Remember, Nat was back on the South Park episode we had. And just hearing this again makes me can't wait to have Nat back on the show again. And we're going to talk all kinds of Cure talk and maybe even further elaborate on her wonderful experience. But she did a great job here recapping it all for you guys. So I'm just going to let her take it away and relive the Vancouver experience. Here you go, Nat.
Hello, hello. Gavin, the Holy Hour crew, and the lovely listeners. Nat here, recording from Vancouver, British Columbia on Monday, June 5th, 2023. Our concert took place on Friday, June 2nd. I took a few days to regroup, recoup, get my thoughts together, and hopefully by now I'm ready to provide a clear, cohesive narrative about my experiences and my overview of the wonderful show that took place at Rogers Arena a couple of days ago. So to give you a bit of my background, I guess I'm on the younger side of the Cure fan spectrum. I've been a fan for 13 years, which of course considering the band's longevity is not that long. This was my fourth Cure concert. My previous one was in 2019, right before the pandemic, when I was lucky to attend the Pasadena Daydream Festival in California. That was absolutely iconic and unforgettable. And the last time the Cure were in Vancouver was in 2016, and of course I was there as well. It was an outdoor show in the park in one of the suburbs of Vancouver, which was absolutely beautiful. And I've also noticed that show was on May 31st, 2016, which was almost exactly to date 7 years back from this year's show, which is wonderful. So I hope they'll be back in 7 years. This year, I went to the concert with two of my close friends, Veronica and Danielle, What's cool about Veronica is that we actually met at this last Vancouver Cure concert in 2016, and we've been friends since then. So this is how the Cure brought us together, and it was basically symbolic and very important for us to go together. And I think this was Veronica's also 4th and 5th Cure concert. And my second friend, Danielle, has actually never seen them, even though she's been a fan for a while. So it was very, very huge for her, as well as very emotional. So I courageously volunteered to buy the 3 non-transferable tickets. I was lucky to get in without the wait list immediately right at the first fan pre-sale. But unfortunately, once I got in, this is when it got pretty crazy, because every seat I was picking was sold out, or basically the Ticketmaster system was telling me that it's taken. And at the end, I wasn't even sure if it's actually taken or if I'm just glitching. So I had to rejoin the queue a couple of times. I also know the arena pretty well, so I was aiming for the very specific tickets originally. But of course, very soon I gave up, and I was just basically getting whatever I could. And I think in the end of the day, we got pretty perfect seats. We were immediately on the right side of the stage, if you look from the stage, in the bowl. So in the amphitheater, not on the floor, which worked out really well because we are not very tall people. And I think ever since we scored these tickets, I've never taken them for granted, because I've listened to a bunch of horror stories from the fellow Holy Hour listeners, as well as I've been approached by a couple of people whom I know personally after the fact, after the show got sold out, basically asking me, how the heck did you get in? So apparently it was very tough. We got sold out pretty quickly. I wish they could have added the second show, but of course it was pretty tight. The schedule is very tight around Vancouver, and I believe they played Portland and Seattle literally the days before, and then they would fly to Salt Lake City. So that's pretty impressive. So I've been closely following the European tour, mostly through the Holy Hour. I was really looking forward to the North American leg, and the night of the New Orleans show really felt like Christmas, when you kind of knew that they're close and they're already on our continent and they're moving towards us. But after that, I've listened to all the episodes, but I did my best not to watch the streams or not to spoiler too much, not to memorize the set lists, etc., because I really wanted to still be surprised. And I knew the general structure of the set list, but again, I did not memorize the order. I knew like the usual beginning as well as the songs they usually play. But again, I did my best not to spoiler too much. So now let's get back to the day of the show. We were literally counting days and hours to the show. The arena is located right downtown Vancouver, easily accessible by transit. So we met around 5:30 by the entrance. We then somehow ended up being first in our line, and we entered the building straight at 6. Getting in was very seamless. We did not need to think about transferring tickets because we were able to meet all together and just go in. Of course, as always, there is a little fear that, oh my god, something might not work, but it all worked perfectly, and we were inside at 6. So we caught up with a few other friends that were attending the show, got a few drinks, hung around, and I made my way to pick up my merch. I'm not sure if every venue does it now, but you can pre-order some merch few days before the show. I pre-ordered the V-neck shirt with a moon. I paid on the website. And I think ideally this process is created to eliminate the lines. However, I was not completely satisfied with this experience, first of all, because the selection of merch online was very limited compared to what was offered at the show. So I still ended up buying more at the venue. For example, I bought the green and purple tour poster with Robert, and also the line to pick up the online orders was basically as long as the merch line to buy merch. So I wouldn't say that I benefited from this service, but it was nice to try. The crowd at the arena was what I expected. People of all ages and demographics. Definitely around 75% of them looked alternative, whether they were goth or punk or just some cool looking folks. I saw a lot of younger people. So when I say younger, I mean like in the early 20s, etc., which is very cool to see that some kids have a great music taste. And a lot of people were wearing shirts from previous tours and concerts. I even saw my Pasadena Daydream shirt, which was nice because it's the first time I noticed this shirt in Vancouver. And I guess the funniest shirt that I saw was the famous meme with the wedding photo of Robert and Mary and the letters saying the Smiths, which is especially iconic if you know the history of Robert and Morrissey. So much like every other review I've heard so far, at 7 p.m. sharp, Twilight Sad hit the stage. It was my third time seeing them, always seeing them with The Cure. Not sure if they perform without The Cure anymore. Always a good time, always a wonderful warm-up band with great songs, very tight musicians, very good atmosphere setter. I am a fan. I listen to them independently, so it was awesome to hear the new songs and to see them live again. When it comes to the atmosphere setters, The Sound of Rain, of course, was a great addition. I'm surprised they have not really been using it for longer because it's such a Cure thing and it's so Cure appropriate and so perfect. Also very soothing and much better than any other music you could be playing while waiting for The Cure. And of course, as soon as the Twilight Sad set was finished, we all got super excited, hyped, and impatient. And for me personally, it's always exciting to see Eden Gallup setting up for his dad. I really love Eden's music, and he's also about the same age as me. So I think he's always been very relatable for me. And of course, after 2019, when he was replacing his father in Asia, he kind of became one of my favorite unofficial Cure members. I also got lucky because I had my friends on one side, and on the other side, I had a wonderful couple, I would say in their 40s, who were very fun and very social, and they were singing, dancing, they were huge fans. I could tell. And before the show, you know, when the lights got dimmed and you knew that the band is about to appear on the stage, this man looked at me and he was like, "Don't worry, I'm also gonna be crying." And so we were basically emotional together with some random person I've never met before for the entire show. That's what The Cure does. It brings all the different weird people together. Much like, again, every other review I've heard, the extremely punctual guys hit the stage right at 8:15. It was incredible. Everybody absolutely freaked out when first Jason and the rest of the band got on the stage. And of course, when Robert appeared, the room basically exploded. I could almost hear the tears coming out of every eye in the room because it was so incredibly powerful, emotional, and sweet. And of course, the lovely couple next to me was also literally crying. It was so wonderful. As you all know, they started with Alone, which is such a beautiful, powerful intro track. I think we'll use to Plain Song being an incredible opener for every concert, but honestly, alone can compete with it. I also hope that once we get this goddamn album, this is an opening track, because it's an incredible, powerful way of starting it. Well, first of all, I hope we get this album. Let's start with that. And of course, the Pictures of You was a nice, powerful explosion right away as well. I think when a band plays one of their biggest hits in the second or the third slot, it always creates such an incredible vibe at the concert right away. So I think they've been doing the right thing by playing it previously and on this tour. And of course, Disintegration is everyone's favorite album, I'm assuming. So having Pictures of You and Close Down as the second and third track on the set list is a brilliant idea, and it gets everybody hyped. Of course, you all know how to Google and what setlist FM is, so I won't be going through every song track by track. I would rather share my emotions and experiences. And as I mentioned before, I did my best not to memorize the order of the songs, so I did get surprised quite a few times. And I also proved myself that I'm a big nerd, because I could guess the song by its intro. I would say by a couple of notes of each intro, I already knew which song is going to be playing next. But I'm sure that's something that every Cure fan can do. When I heard the very first notes of Strange Day, I was shaken, because I did not know that they played it on this tour. I even considered maybe it was the tour debut, but I guess it wasn't. I know that they're not playing it every night, not even every second night, and it was such a big honor, and I believe it was the only song of Pornography that they played. In general, the way the setlist was structured was kind of an art on its own.